Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Michael, portrait artist from Perth, Western Australia. And yes, this week we're finishing off this father and daughter portrait. It's Dad's turn this week and I'll be sharing with you the techniques and strategies and some of the colorings to get the look that I wanted. Hey, if you like this sort of material, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, leave some comments and some questions for me. And also along here, I'll be sharing with you my journey in becoming a professional portrait artist as well. Hope you get something out of that for your journey. So without further ado, roll the intro and let's paint. Well, welcome back to the easel, and here's our dad and daughter portrait. Now I'm going to be starting on his eyebrows. I'm just because it's a darker piece, and the technique that I'm actually showing you here is, there's a quick glance of my palette. You can see the bit of mess going on, but you can see it's just all different values, different lights and darks on there. That's all I've done. So this is the this is actually 60% ultramarine blue and the 40% burnt umber. That's how I mix the black. Now you can just go and buy a black. You can buy a lamp black or whatever black you prefer. I just like mixing mine. That way I get to shuffle the tone of the black around a little bit. Some people actually use purple in their blacks as well, so they actually get that nice coloring in the black, because blacks need a little bit of color as well. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the eyebrows in black, and then I'm going to change just the tone of the black, or the value of the black, and I think you can just see it there. I'm going to put some lighter marks just to give the indication that there's some thinner spots on the eyebrows without actually painting an eyebrow. And I think this is what I love about this style of painting. You know, it's this illusion that there's some detail in there when there's not. Now we're going to zoom in, and all I'm doing is just doing a little dabby stroke just to get that illusion of those eyebrows. Now they may not sit right at the moment, and this is one of the things that you have to realize. You have to wait until you've covered the canvas to see what's working and what's not. Now the reason we're doing this as if we would paint a still life is because you want to try and train your brain into seeing shapes rather than the whole object. So rather than see a whole face, I just want to see shapes. Now, normally I would just do a basic, I'd do a center line, I'd do the halfway to get the eyes and put the points where the center of the eye, the corners of the eyes were. I'd do a little point where the bridge of the nose was and put a little line where the bottom of the nose was. I'd normally put a little mark where the center of the mouth was and a mark on the little corners of the mouth. And then, of course, my flat chin line. His chin is a little bit hidden by his beard there. That's about all you really need. I might give some indication on the ear, obviously where his shoulder was lying, and maybe what I've sketched there for the jacket is probably what I'd normally sketch for a jacket. These crease lines I wouldn't normally put in, but I want to show you something here. The crease lines that I've put in there is just showing you that look how bad they look when you first paint them. And when you're so close to the canvas, remember I'm closer than you. You're on the canvas. So you're another foot away from this canvas than what I am. But it's like painting branches. So when I show people painting still lifes and we put twigs and branches in, people say, what am I doing that for? This is why you're learning how to paint twigs and branches, because twigs and branches are all the laughter lines and the creases on a face. And I'm going to show you how you get that effect. And you see what I'm doing? I'm actually changing the value, or the light and the dark, of these lines and just basically dabbing them in. I'm just smudging the paint, as I like to say, into these different little spots, and I'm trying to jiggle that brush so the line is uneven. And I was asked, why is that brush jiggling? I don't want a smooth straight line. Remember, I'm not doing a architectural draft drawing here, and I'm certainly not looking for photorealism here. I'm looking for what I call abstract realism, or what people call abstract realism. In other words, we're going to create the illusion of detail in here. Now, this mixture that I'm using is my Pyrrole Rubine. It's the red, and I'm using on this particular section. I've actually switched to Geneva paints. They've already pre-mixed with the solvents, I almost said lubricants, but the solvents should make them flow. So we've got plenty of linseed oil already mixed in there. They're all non-toxic. I don't like using toxic paints, which is probably why I stay away from the cadmiums. Again, as you saw on the palette, I've just got my white, I've got my brown, which is burnt umber, the blue, ultramarine blue. The red I'm using is Pyrrole Rubine. I tend to use that whether I'm using a Winsor Newton or I'm using the Geneva paints. And then I've got my Bismuth Yellow. I'll actually type these down in the bottom for you. You can use anything really, as long as you've got a red and a yellow and a blue and a brown. And then as I say, I always pre-mix my blanks. I take a 60% of ultramarine and 40% of my burnt umber. Now, if I don't use the Geneva paint, as I'm using Winsor Newton or Wilsberg or something like that, I'd actually pre-mix some linseed oil in there just to get the flow a little bit better. The reason I'm saying this, it's probably a little bit easier when you're first beginning. Remember, we're talking about beginning and learning how to paint portraits. In just to have the paint a little bit thinner so it flows a little bit easier, and it'll stop you putting it on too thick as well. If you put it on too thick, then as you start to layer these different values on top of each other or next to each other, if it's too thick, you'll get this heavy ridge line appearing. So by just putting a little bit of linseed oil in there, refined linseed oil, a few drops, just take it down to a nice, smooth, creamy mixture. And then when you put it on, remember when you load your brush, just dab the brush a little bit on the palette, take some of the excess off, and just put it on. Look, if you haven't got enough in your brush, it's half a second. Dab a bit more on, a couple of taps on the palette just to take that heaviness off, and then you'll be able to smudge this paint in. So as I said, this is actual Pyrrole Rubine mixed with my Bismuth Yellow, so it's red and yellow, giving me the orange. And just to take the orangey effect off, I've just put a little dab of burnt umber, which is burnt orange really. So I always think of the brown as a burnt orange. It's a bit like blues when people say, oh, it's a bit grey. Well, grey is blue. So blue is grey. So if it's too grey, it's blue. If it's too brown or too orange, it's got too much brown in it. And then you can work your colour wheel. If it goes too brown, you want to knock the brown off, put a little bit of blue. If it's too blue, put a little bit of brown. And that's how we take the edge off. So we're not getting those bright, vibrant colours. We're getting more muted, more natural tones. So what you see me doing now is I'm smudging the paint around those crease lines. And what you're going to find, see those heavy crease lines down below where I haven't painted around yet, look horrible and out of place and not natural at all. And so you're not trying to get perfection up front. I'm just going to work my way down because I've got that actual colour. And see that dabbing motion, and I'm trying to, again, push the bristles onto my canvas and do a little bit of a pull motion to get some texture. Now, even though this paint flows and it's certainly not impasto, I can still get texture on the surface by this technique and by that little jiggling motion of the brush. I don't like just paint. You're not paint by numbers here. Jiggling motion on the brush. You'll make sure that your lines don't end up nice and square and even. You don't want square, even lines. You want jiggliness. And then let the person's eyes fix it. I call it letting the eyes have something to bite into. If you can give the eyes something to bite into and let the eyes fix it, it's amazing what will happen. They'll go, look at the detail you've put in there. It's amazing. I love what you've done, because you're giving the eyes something to do and it becomes more enjoyable. So this is what we're just working on the forehead here. Now, I was asked, someone said, when you were starting your art career, what was it like? Because I came from a business world. I built different businesses and so forth. And look, I was the same as everybody else. When you first start off, I'm going to say it's 90% of it is going to be mastering your mindset. If you want to make this art a business, it's going to be mastering your mindset. I just want to give you some hints and tips here of how I was managed to do this. I know I've done it in all my businesses, but especially art. Because because I think your mindset is everything. It's limiting beliefs. Now, I hear artists say, "Oh, I can't make money," and that's real poison for your brain. You need to rewire your brain, and those thoughts you're having should support you, not sabotage you. So when I was first starting my art career, I'll talk you a little bit what I'm doing. Usually I'm just smudging that paint in. What I'm doing here is I'm just putting the values where the values belong. I'm looking for where this value goes and then just smudging it in there. And here you go, see me reload my brush. And I'm looking for bits of the canvas that I haven't covered and needs a value shift. And I'm just putting those values where they belong. And I'm not worried about covering up those crease lines underneath, if you notice. I'm just not worried about that at all, because some I want disappearing, reappearing. You look at someone's face that's heavily lined, they're not distinctive. Someone has got a Sharpie or a texture and marked it on there. They thicken, they thin, they move, they twist, they turn, they lighten, they darken. And by smudging your values around, you're going to be able to create that effect without even trying to. So that's important. So what limiting beliefs? What I would say is write your limiting beliefs down on a piece of paper, an actual physical piece of paper. And then on a separate piece of paper, have a look at that limiting belief and see if you can restate it in the affirmative. So turn it to a positive, not a negative, or turn it into an action. So for an example, I was talking to an artist the other day, and he said, "Oh, I'm just hopeless at selling. I've got no sales skills." Well, I said, I don't understand what you mean by that, because everyone's selling every day of their life. You're always in discussions with your friends. You're always convincing your friends of your point of view. You're having conversations with yourself, especially as artists. We're all, "Oh, I don't like that. I think I need to do this." And so salesmanship, I think, is a bit of a thing. So I said, "What do you mean by salesmanship?" "Oh, I can't sell anything." I said, well, why can't you? Well, what's the issue? How many people do you talk to? And what is going wrong? When you talk to someone to sell them a piece of art, what is going wrong? And he said, "Oh, no, I'm just not talking to people. That's my issue." So it's not salesmanship. Now it's you're not getting to talk to people. Yeah. So it's not that you're a bad salesman. It's you haven't got the skill to attract people to discuss your art with. Yeah. Okay. Well, you can fix that. You can fix that easy. And he was like, "Oh." I said, "So instead of writing down you're a bad salesman, you hate sales, I can't sell things, I'm not like one of these super salesmen, sell ice to an Eskimo," we've all heard that stuff. What you're really saying is, my issue is I'm not speaking to enough people. And I will say this to all artists. There's 3 golden rules. You want to be successful in selling your art, 3 golden rules. Tell the people, and tell the people. That's it. And that was his issue. He just wasn't telling enough people, and he didn't know how to tell enough people. So then we can work on that as a solution. So you can either write them in a positive, you can replace it with, "I'm a successful artist," having some positive words on this other page and having some action words. I need to discover how I can tell more people about my art. Wonderful. So that is that. Straight away. So an action step there. You can read mindset books, like The Goal Giver, The Artist's Way, Art of Money and Success. I like journaling. So right from the very beginning, I like doing journaling. Doing inner work, you're probably going to find yourself that you're your best mentor if you approach it with the right success. So, and claim your successful artist identity. Live, breathe, show up as if you're a version of you being a successful artist. Have your business cards reflect that you are a professional artist. You're not an amateur. Don't make your cards look amateurish. Spend a little bit of money. Make the cards look really nice. Have them with a nice feel. Have a look at your website, to make your websites feel this way. So I would say the first thing is attitude. And that's the thing. And if you can switch your attitude, you can switch everything. So take all your negative things now that are on that bit of paper, because now you've replaced them turn them into positive statements on your other piece of paper. Take the negative ones, screw it up and put it in the bin. It's gone. We're never looking at that anymore. We're just going to pick up those 4 or 5 statements that are positive with some action things and write them down. And then you can start building action steps. So on the next video, I'll actually talk about, finding your audience. I think that'll be a really interesting one. I'm probably yakking a bit too much about business on this one instead of talking about what I'm doing on the painting here. But I think you can see that dabbing, that smudging. I am trying to smudge values together. I am not interested in trying to paint like I'm a house painter. I haven't got a 4-inch bristle brush, load it with paint and start painting a wall, or get a roller and start painting. Abstract painters use totally different techniques. Well, some do, some don't. If I was looking at Sergio Gomez, and I really like his abstract work, that's exactly what he does. You see him working the painting, putting values, and that's why his paintings actually do work. So I didn't film painting the first eye for you, but right here, let's just have a look at this eye, the right eye. You'll see once again, I'm just using I've actually changed the tone of the black. It's not black. It may appear black there, but I've actually lowered the value of it just so it doesn't leap off the page and dominate. I want those eyebrows of those bit of blacks to actually be the dominant part. And if you look at the forehead now, and I haven't finished the forehead, I'm just looking for blank spots, just filling my canvas, moving on. I will come back afterwards and have a look at that forehead. Now, I think it needs some more value shifts. I'll put them in there. But already those crease lines through that forehead look a bit more natural now. You can see how I've smudged paint around them and made them disappear. Same with this eye. You'll watch me as I jiggle my brush and I'm trying to push and pull paint. I want to give life to the eye so it doesn't just sit dead on the paper. And my technique of doing this is I'll jiggle my brush and try and put a vibrancy in the end of that brush, so when I smudge the paint, I'm not getting any even lines. Even the eye will not be perfectly round. If you look at the left-hand eye, if you really critically look at it, you can see I've got a sharp angle on the right hand, as on your right-hand side as you're looking on my right-hand edge, a sharp edge coming, and then it cuts back on an edge. The left-hand side's got a slight curve to it. But unless you point that out to somebody, as soon as they step back 3 or 4 feet, the eye looks correct. The illusion happens. The girl's eyes on the left-hand side are not perfectly round. The pupils are not round. They may look round to you from here, but you remember me painting them. I just put smudges. And you'll watch me smudge some highlights in here. Now, the highlights I'm using is titanium white. I mix a bit of ultramarine blue and a little dab of burnt umber, very, very light, but it is a white. Now look at it disappeared. It is nowhere near as bright as the one on the other side. Now you'll see me as I come around the eye, and we know how the eye is done. We know there's going to be a bit of a light patch in there underneath the dark. There's a dark patch, and there's going to be some lights coming in the center. So I'm just changing the value, putting the values where I think the values are best represented. And I always say, when you're painting a portrait, the more value shifts you can get, the better. Now, watch on that side. That is a little bit of Pyrrole Rubine with my yellow, my Bismuth Yellow, and then a little bit of brown, and then some titanium white to get that coloring. Now, when I first put it down, it looks wrong. This is what's going to happen to you. You're going to mix the color. You know it's correct color. You're going to put it on your canvas and going to go, that does not look right. And the temptation is to try to fix it. The temptation is go and try and fix it there and then, and the attitude is do not try and fix it there and then. Just trust you've mixed it correctly, put it on, ignore it. The next step is look for another blank piece of canvas where you haven't put any paint down, and then find the value for that paint and put it there. The advantage of a limited palette, by the way, by having white, brown, blue, red, yellow, that's it, and then pre-mix your black, you're very limited in your choice. That's going to give you, when you first start off, that's going to give you a huge advantage, because I don't have to remember too hard which colours I use to mix up the colour. I've only got a few. I know the base is orange, so I know it's a yellow and a red. There's my orange. Now, how did I shift it? Oh, I put a bit of brown in there. Okay, so take that orangey out. Oh, and then I put some white to lighten it, or I might put some more yellow in there to lighten it. Remember, if I put more yellow, it's probably going to shift to more of a browny tone. If I put more red, we'll get more reddy tone. If I actually put more burnt umber in there and more yellow together, we're probably going to switch to a more greener tone. That's just what you'll see that happening. But all the time, it's just the color, and then I'm more interested in the values. It's the values that will make this thing work, not so much the color. Now, you might get somebody, and my camera is probably not the best. It's an old it's a Panasonic GH4 that I'm filming this on. So it's a little bit old now. And maybe the color representation is perhaps not the best. It's not quite as orangey in real life as what you're seeing here. There's a bit of a difference, but that's okay. We're not interested in color. We're interested in the values. We're interested in the techniques. We're looking at that forehead and going, yeah, it's starting to work. I can see the crease lines coming down. I can see where you've jiggled the paint now, and you've made lines thicker, thinner, appearing, disappearing. Looks a lot different than when we first painted it. Now, as I said, you don't have to put all the lines there. I put them there so you could actually see what I was going to do, and you could follow along a bit more easily. As we go on in this show and these shows when I do them, I'm probably going to put less and less detail down. People who want to see the heavy detail can come and look back at these first couple of videos I'm doing here. I've got a commission to do, by the way. Husband has commissioned me to paint his wife. And I'm going to be sharing some stuff that I'm doing with that one. That's going to be a full-length portrait. It might be either full-length or three-quarters. I'll just have to check the files on that one. But it's going to be interesting. I'm going to show you some techniques on how we're going to use... And I'm actually going to use this same technique. I'm going to use this still life painting technique on the next two paintings. Because if you can do this... If you can just treat that eye as an item, as an object, not somebody's face, you're more likely to concentrate on, okay, so one side of the eye, the white is darker and got a little bit of pink when it gets close to the nose there. It's got that little bit of a pink edge, right in there. And so that. So you'll put that in there. And you'll go, oh, so if I come out a little bit, because his face is turned, the light is going to catch the other white. So I'll make that a little bit lighter. It's way, way off white, by the way. When you mix this, please don't just do white. It'll look horrible. Put some ultramarine and a bit of burnt umber. Dull it down. Sometimes you'll be surprised of how dull you can make that white, and it will still look white because it's the value against the other values. So as I said, by painting this as a still life object, it's allowing me to forget about the face, forget about likeness, forget about all that stuff you hear portrait artists talk about. That's getting a little bit up there. If you can get this, it's going to train your brain. So when you start looking at somebody later on, and we get into more painting without any guidelines, we're just going to start painting, say, in the style of Sargent, for instance, and we'll do some of those. We'll consistently reference back to this, because your brain is going to be trained in going, oh, I remember now, there's a fold over the eye there, there's a second fold because I can see his eye now. I can see there's about 6 different value shifts around that eye. In the eye itself, the white will be dark on one side of the other, so I can get that. The colour of the eye is not a constant, it's darker at the top, might have a little bit of black down the bottom. I know from my highlights in the eye, I've got to have 2 different tones. What will happen? That will just become instinctive in your nature. So once you start to paint like a Sargent style painting, and we'll do it without the lines, without actually drafting it like we're doing here, you will automatically start to paint more naturally and more freely and more expressively, and you're going to find it amazing. Now, having said that, if you want to be a portrait artist and you want to take photographs of people, because people just don't want to sit around for 3 or 4 days while you paint them, and you just want to take photos, maybe do a couple of sketches of them, maybe mix a little bit of color while you're with them, so you've actually got and that's a handy little thing. I've seen people with little palette boxes. I think they're watercolor palette boxes actually, but they open them up, they'll mix a little bit of paint on their palette, they're all paint, they'll get the color and go, that's his coloring, and they'll put a smear. And you look at this little palette box, it's actually fascinating. I'll get one for you and show you. And you open them up, and guys who take a lot of photographs to paint from will have these little palette boxes. I've got one myself, and you open it up, and then you'll see all these smears of color in there. And there's the eye color. I've seen people with 2 or 3 of these things, and it just fits in their backpack, and they've come back and they look at that, and because they've got that as a reference, they can now do really, really good color matching that sometimes your camera just can't get. And it does add a lot to the painting. It adds a lot to the painting. It's a great little technique of once you start painting life people, like I'm doing, I've actually got color swabs that I'm actually referring to. And that's why I know that looking at the film while you're not seeing the actual true color. But cameras do that. But imagine this, I'd taken a picture, and this is the photograph I've taken. And now I'm telling you this is the wrong colouring. The gentleman's not quite as orange and that. The pinks and that are coming through are a little bit strong on him because that's just where the lighting is in the camera. So imagine that was a picture and I was just trying to paint it. And I painted this. When it goes to real life, they'll go, I'm a little bit orange, aren't I? And a little bit pink. Aha. So that's why you take your little colour swabs when you actually do this stuff. But we're more interested in values, as I said. Automatically, you can now see the creases appearing and those lines appearing underneath, starting to look a little bit more natural. He's got some bags under his eyes. Look at that white on the right-hand side, sorry. You see I put a dark value and then the lighter value and then another dark value because we know that's how bags of eyes work, yeah? We get that little puffiness under the eye. All this, by treating it as a still life, a little object like this, it just makes it so much more fun. So much more fun. On my next painting, I've got a gentleman, so he's asked me to paint his father. His father's name's Albert. We're going to be painting Albert. So this one's stepping back in more traditional style. There's the head, the neck, the shoulders, and you're getting a little bit of a view of the person. But the next painting I'm doing, Albert, what he wants it for is his office, because he often consults his father and asks his father's advice. He said his dad's more often right than wrong, and they get on really, really well. And he said there's moments in the office when he'd like to look up and see his father, and when he's pondering questions, just look at his father and imagine what his father would say to him. This is why art and portraits and still lifes, this is why they connect. This is what art is all about. It's all about creating connection and creating an environment for someone to really, really love. So what I'm doing with Albert, this is going to be the next video, we're going to crop really tight in on Albert. We're not going to paint much of Albert. In fact, we're not going to even paint the hair on top of the head of Albert. We're going to be cutting in. You're not really going to see much clothing. I'm going to mute the clothing out. This is artist liberties, I suppose you can call it. And we're going to mute it out. And we're going to cut right in. And I'm actually going to make one side of Albert's face a little bit darker. The photographic technique I used to get this lighting, it's called Rembrandt lighting, if you can look that up. And it really just means we're going to do a flashlight, single flashlight from one side of his face. I'm going to darken everything around, so I'm going to take a picture with the camera, so basically everything is blacked out, just about. I've got a speed light, sorry, not a flashlight, a speed light. Mine's a Godox, and it's in a 36-inch, those boxes you see, you see they're black and they got the white on the front, and people, you see in their flash, and that's it. And I've set one of them up on the side of him, and then we take the picture. That lights up part of his face. I've done a couple of alterations to it, move it around a little bit till I get a look. So I've got about 4 or 5 photos now of Albert. Once I've got them, because I'm 3 or 4 feet, 5 feet away from Albert when I'm doing this in old money, so what's 5 feet, a couple of meters, 3 meters away, whatever. You'll pace back so you get a good shot. But when I actually get it, I crop right in on Albert. I get the composition, and by having the darkness, which would be on Albert's left-hand side, because I actually put the camera on his other side, I've captured everything about him, and I've got a mood. Now, I've got 4 or 5 photographs that I will actually print out for Albert, so I can really study his character. We spent a bit of time talking, so I got to know him, and he's not smiling. He's looking like he's contemplating an answer. That's what I asked him for, because that's what his son wants hanging in his office. So that's the next video. We're going to paint Albert. It'll be very interesting. I think we're doing a 12 by 16, and then we'll obviously frame up so he gets a little bit bigger once he's in a frame, but not too big. And that's something I always say to people, you don't have to do huge paintings. Some people start painting large thinking it'll make them famous, and that's not the way. People tend to paint small because collectors collect smaller style paintings because they can put them in their homes. They can have quite a range of paintings in their homes. It's only as they start to get notoriety and get more famous, some people start asking for larger paintings, especially the galleries and the institutions. They like larger paintings. That's where you are there. So, you've watched me. I haven't changed the color. I've just changed the value. One of the techniques you'll see me use. Now, see there's a bit of pink in there. So what I will do, I would actually put the value down. And if I think it needs to be a bit redder, for instance, say a bit more red in that spot, I'll put a little bit of red, tiny little bit of red on the end of the brush. I'll dab it in that spot. Then I'll clean the brush out. And then I'll come back and smudge the red in, which means now I've got red overlaid on whatever color's underneath. So I've actually got it on top without having to go in with a physical red and paint it, which might block everything out. I do the same with whites for highlights, and I will put a little bit of white on the brush, dab it in the spot where I want it, wipe the brush clean, and then smudge that white in the color underneath, and it creates a 3-dimensional color. Now you see we're painting this part in the cheek, but look at the brush strokes. I know his cheek moves downwards. You know that, I know that. Everyone knows that a cheek falls away under his eyes. And I'm thinking about the curve. So that's where I'm moving the brush. Even though I'm dabbing and brushing and smudging, I'm still thinking the direction that goes. And I'm constantly looking for where can I shift a value? Where would the value shift? I know there's going to be a lighter value on top of that cheek, and there's some marks gone in there now. That's a bit lighter value. I know as it gets to the center, it's going to be a little bit darker. There might be a bit of a lightness underneath, so I made a bit of a lighter smudge in there. And basically what you're watching is just someone smudging in value. Value does all the work, but color takes all the credit. And I didn't come up with that. That's not mine. That's somebody else's saying, but it is so true. And I think we might, having said that, we should do a black and white painting, shouldn't we? So I'll do these next time. I've got Albert to do. Then I've got the husband's wife to paint. We'll do a larger painting on that. And when I say larger painting, if you imagine an A2 piece of paper, we'll probably paint that size. That'll be wonderful. Yeah, let's do that. We'll paint that size for her. And then when we frame it up, obviously it'll be nice size. Won't be too big for the home. Won't be too ostentatious. And that's probably the size we're going to do that. Now I'm smudging in the colour for the lips. And instantly you start going, it's the wrong colour. I will say this all the time. You know, when I'm painting and I'm doing this, I'm constantly saying to myself, it's the wrong colour. Here's that white technique. So a bit of white, I've smudged it around, and then I've cleaned the brush when I'm happy, and I will smudge. I'm doing a little bit underneath it, and look, it's gone. I've just used the brush and smudged it, but it's add 3-dimensional to that lip now without having distinctive white marks. Once I put that darker value above, you can really see it, and you see I'm just smudging that value in. Just smudging the value in, not trying to block it, not trying to do little squares, not trying to make it even. I'll smudge some of that value into his mustache as well to create that jagged edge. And this dabbing, look at that, dab, 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 smudgy smudge. What I want, because remember hairs of the beard, isn't going to be totally covered. You're going to see color underneath. You're going to see, as long as you've got the right value underneath, it's going to work when you step away from it. But I say, when I first put those lips in, they look incorrect. They look wrong. This looks too orange as we're doing it. But that's just the value. And as we come back and we layer our values now next to each other, you will notice how it starts to lose the falseness, I call it. So don't get tricked looking at colors on your palette initially. Don't get tricked by that. You just work on your values, and that's all I'm doing. I'm just smudging some value into that grey beard. Now, I know that once someone steps back from that, it'll just look like a beard that's semi-transparent. You can see through the hairs of the beard, and I haven't painted any hairs. I haven't done anything. You know, I've just smudged some stuff. When I paint Albert, he's got some quite wiry hairs in his mustache and in his beard. And I'll show you a technique just for getting a few wiry hairs into a mustache and into a beard that you'll look at and go, the whole thing is being painted in such intricate detail. And when someone walks up to it, no. It hasn't at all. Okay, so we're just going to cut in now because I want to give a bit of a frame to that ear. So I'm just going to cut in now. He's got a black jumper that I asked him to wear underneath. I deliberately asked him to wear black because it gives us a lovely contrast against that beard. And now you'll know, there I'm just peeking into frame. Now you can see why I made the background, why I did black around the outside, then light in the background coming in. So when I paint this black jumper now, it can have a little bit of a pop to it into the painting. So it's just little things like that as an artist, and you're going to have your own things. This is just one of my things. I like to get lighter background coming in, so when I paint the blacks of her jacket and the black of his jumper, I know it's going to give me a pop. It's going to jump. Her jacket works because the background is not black. You can really see over her shoulder where his finger's just coming over. You can really see the pop of the black against that lighter black, if you want to call it, which is really a grey, isn't it? Done there. And I'm going to smudge in a little bit of his neck in here, just so he doesn't look necklace. You know, have you ever seen those baby pictures, you know, and the mums wrap them up, and then you get this picture and it's like the baby's got no neck, it's just his head, and it's that tight, it's like, oh. But if you just pulled that blanket down a little bit and showed some of the baby's neck, it would actually look a little bit more natural. So we know these things. We've seen these pictures taken. We know what's going on. So as artists, we can then incorporate that. And in the picture, I don't think you can see his neck. In some of the photographs, very difficult. But that doesn't matter. We're an artist. We do what we like. We know it should be there. We know it will add a little bit of joint from his head to his black jumper. So we know that'll work. So we'll pop that in. Now, the ears, I never paint ears either. I know you're going to hear me say this. I'm looking for where the dark values are. And I'm trying to line those dark values up with a feature on his face. That's why you saw my brush sliding across there. I'm going, oh yeah, there's a value there, and it lines up with that piece there. It's in line. And then I'll start smudging. If you do it this way, if you constantly look at the dark of his ear and see where it lines up with like his eye and come across and smudge it in that place, what you're doing, you're training your brain to paint without lines. Even though we put some lines there to help us because we're learning, that's fine. But just because they're there, let's not get lazy. Let's still go, okay, there's a darkness and it lines up there. And then look at the shape of the dark. Now, I don't always get it right on minute one. No questions asked. And the ears are a little bit tricky sometimes. But again, I'm looking, there's the nose, there's the bottom of the earlobe. Okay, there's a bit of a lighter spot there, there's a lighter spot in there. And I've just gone and just modeled it up and gone, that's good enough. Now, if you zoomed in on that ear, you would go, Michael, that is not even an ear. You just smudge some darks and lights and play tricks on people. It's fun, isn't it? I love this style of painting. I love this abstract realism. It's just an illusion. You walk up to that and you can probably see it because we're quite zoomed in as well, and you're going, it doesn't even look like an ear. But when we step back, it doesn't matter what it looks like from a foot away. Really doesn't. A couple of feet away, doesn't matter. It's when that's hanging on the wall and you're 4 or 5 feet away and you look at that as a whole, it works. Look, her ear is no better. Look at her ear. There's nothing in it. A few smudges and that is it. Everything about this thing is just me smudging values against values. What will happen is this black comes in. It was one of the reasons I asked him to wear black. Because black is so strong, it will start to even some of the colours and the values of the face. And now if you start looking at the beard, magically, and we're still really close to this, so you're not getting the full effect of the illusion, but magically as the black goes in, the neck colour changes, appears to change. Then now the bottom of that chin appears to be changing. Now he had this maroon red jacket, and that's what we're going to paint him now. What will happen now, because we know we've used a lot of oranges in the face, and on her side she's wearing black, but because of this maroon jacket, I knew it would contrast with his face really, really well. You watch the magic start to happen to the face once this next one comes in. So this is really, really important. Don't fix the face. Don't worry about it. Just, it's a bit pink, it's a bit orange, it's not working. I know, we're all the same. You want to go and fiddle. Don't. My challenge is don't fiddle. What you're going to do is just, there's some blank canvas. I'm going to go and move in and paint the blank canvas. Now, we got the advantage here. We put a couple of lines in to show where his collar was. I've actually drawn where I want the button in. Nothing wrong with doing stuff like that. You know, Sargent quite often put marks where he wanted things. And you look at some of his paintings, you can actually see where he's got the mark in the wrong spot. And I can't remember the famous painting, but you can actually see where he's actually painted a pocket and it turned out a little bit lower. And then when he stood back, he's realised it, so he's repainted over the top of that, and he's actually moved the pocket up. I can't remember the painting. I must see if I can find it again. But quite often you look at paintings by the greats, and if you start to really study them, you can see where they've moved things around. You know, they've put something in, they've stood back and gone, now I've got this and this, and I'm looking at it, but no, that's a bit low, and they'll go and correct and move it up. That's the beauty of oil paint. Especially if you put some linseed oil in there. And you can even put a drop of clove oil. Now, I'm going to get a lot of kickback on that. But if you really want your paints to dry a little bit slow, just the minutest amount of clove oil will slow. Won't stop them drying, unless you put too much in, then they'll never dry. But just a tip on the corner of your brush, dabbed on the side, mix some into the paint, it will slow that down for you. Geneva paints, they are very slow drying, and you don't have that issue with them. But if I'm using Winsor & Newton, I tend not to use clove oil. You can. I tend not to use it, but I'm just letting you know it is there. I'm very happy just with my linseed oil, and my paints tend not to dry quick enough because I paint every day. That's the thing. Someone asked me, how do you stop your paints drying? Well, I paint every day, so they don't dry. They do start to dry, I just scrape them off and put some more, but the majority of it's not drying. All I'm doing now is just outlining some lines that I can see on his jacket, and I'm doing them in black deliberately because I want that black and the black jumper all to mix in. I could have lightened this black a little bit, made it a little bit grayer, but I wanted the contrast against the background as well, so I've left it blank. That was just a decision I made. This is a red jacket. You'll better see it's a burgundy red jacket. It's got no black in it whatsoever. You go, no black, and you put black in there. Yeah, because you even know you can get whatever colour fabric you want, if it's a darker colour, and you crease it up, and where the crease is then, your eyes will perceive it as black. Now, I could have put a little bit of purple into this black to give it a bit of depth in here, but I just wanted it fairly simple. I didn't want anything distracting from the maroon colour that I'm going to put on in a minute. Then when I did his jacket, I actually mixed up I think about 5 values of this maroon colour when I put it on here. So even here, before I paint this jacket, I deliberately, there's the darkest maroon, there's the next level maroon, and you can get those value cards and so you can judge it. Basically what I do is I mix up a value, the darkest one I've got, and then I'll put a little bit of smudge, and then right next to where I'm mixing, I'll make sure the next is mixed the same, and then I'll lighten it the way I want to, either with a bit of yellow or a little bit of white. They're the only two ways you can lighten your paint, by the way, with this palette. You can only lighten it by putting yellow in there or putting white in there, and you can only darken it by putting blue in there or putting red in there. So your decision making is very, very easy. You've just limited your options. As you go on, you're going to find a favorite color. And what I would say is you build your palette just on that issue. Just add one color at a time to your palette. Don't overwhelm it. Oh, I could use this, use this, use this. You might find, a purple that you want to put on because you want to mix the purple with blacks. Well, just add the purple to it. Get a really nice purple that you like. Add it to the palette once you're used to using just these colors and say, well, that is for that, and I'll just leave it on there and I'll learn how to use that color on my palette with my painting. And then you're done. You might find another yellow that you like and then say, oh, I'm going to add this yellow into my mix now, and this is what I'm going to use. But just add one at a time until you're used to it, until you're used to using it. Because maybe it's a convenience color. So it just sits there and doesn't get used, or you're not familiar with it, or you haven't had lots of practice with it. It's not convenient at all. So you've got your essential palette, which is what we're doing now. Remember Zorn palettes, I think it was only 3 colors. So we've got a bit of an advantage there. But having said that, you're just going to get used to using this palette to start off with, and then go, you know what, I might add a purple, or I might add a different yellow, or I might add a different red, or I know I like green, this particular green, so I'm going to add this green. One color at a time, practice for a couple of months just with that one color, get really familiar with it, learn where it is sitting on your palette there, and then when you're really happy with that, and you're questioning yourself, go, I wonder what would happen if I put this with my palette. Put it on there, try it. If you're not using it, if it's not working for you, hey, get rid of it. It's an experiment. You're an artist, so we like to be creative, we like to experiment, we like to see what's going to work for us. Okay, so here comes his jacket now. A bit hard to see on the camera, but I'm just going to smudge the paint in the direction the jacket goes. And you see I'm moving all over the canvas now. I'm deliberately doing that because I don't want to get stuck in one spot, or there'll be too much irregularity with my painting when I want irregularity with it. I'll just cut a little bit around there, and then you'll see I'm back on the palette, change a little bit of the value, pop it in, smudge it into the other value there. So people say, oh, you don't blend. No, I don't blend. It's good enough for your paintings. If you just get a value and it's around, you're painting up to the next value, as if you've picked the right value, obviously it's a half value shift or one value shift depending on what you're trying to create. As your brush is next to the other paint, the two paints will smudge into each other anyway, enough to give the illusion of being blended without you going all blendy blend and softening it, and then you'll lose the edges that the eyes are going to be gripping onto. I'm just going to take a drink, guys. It's wearing my voice out, talking so much. So now you can see how I've smudged that paint on the between her jacket and his jacket. We'll come back, we'll do a little bit more now, and you might go, oh, it's not really working yet. You can't put a brush stroke down and go, look how fantastic it is. That's just not how painting works. It's normally put a brush stroke down and you're going, ooh. You have to wait till you got the whole thing covered. You'll see me now start to smudge away. I'm going to the direction. I'm painting the direction, even though I'm smudging, I'm painting the direction that I believe the jacket is falling at that particular time. I know the collar is falling down, so look at the direction the brush is going, the direction of the collar. That's probably, even though I'm keeping my strokes fairly random and dabby and pulling and twisting and turning, you'll see that brush twist and turn. I hold my brush funny, by the way. It's actually laying, I'm not holding it like a pencil, it's actually laying, I think it's between my second, and it's got 2 fingers underneath it and 2 fingers on top and a thumb, just trying to create some balance. Quite light. That allows it to move. It actually makes my hand a little bit unsteady sometimes when I try to paint, And that's fine, because that's the effect I want. I want that unsteadiness, I want that vibration going on. And there we go. And you see, I'll just follow those brush strokes down, making sure I just cover that canvas. As I get that, I'll be looking for another blank. And you see the twist? I just put a different value on the brush then. I just twisted it in there. Not really, a different value coming up here now. And let's just twist it around there. And by twisting your brush as you paint, you can just get these effects, and you don't have to draw like a draftsman. I'm not trying to draw like a draftsman. I'm not trying to make edges perfect, as I constantly say. And this is what's going to give this jacket the illusion of a jacket. I'm not trying to paint leather, by the way. It's a leather jacket. I'm not trying to paint the surface texture of the jacket. I'm just purely putting in the values as I go. And you can see I've just changed the value again. I've got 4 or 5. I think there's 5 values in this that I'm using. And you see dab, dab, twist, turn. Let's go somewhere else. There's a bit of blank over here. Let's fill this in. And you'll actually see the actual canvas on this started to move. I didn't even worry about that, because to me that's just going to add a little bit more texture. Sorry guys, I'm just off screen there dabbing and painting away. I'll get better at setting these cameras up. There we go. He's back in, and you'll see where just flick that brush over, not too fussed. Let's bring it up from the bottom now. And I'm really just painting in the... I'm just drinking water. Sorry guys if you hear that. And I'm really just trying to paint the direction that the jacket is going, making sure that it is covered. There's a bit of blank canvas there. Let's cover that blank canvas. I know you see what I mean about the red jacket and his face. Because the strong red is against the orange of the face, all of a sudden the face quietens down as well. What we could say, quietens down. You can see I was holding the brush then, just flick, flick, flick. Not really looking for anything too accurate there. I'll just put some little marks. I don't know if the camera will show these up, because I don't like them to stand out. You might just be able to see those little red ridges, just simulating that there's actual zipper there. But I don't go in and paint silver and white and black and all the different things. Just put some little marks. You'll be amazed at what people's eyes will pick up. Same with the zipper on the right hand side. You can see how uneven it is, but the illusion is there. And there it is guys, the completed painting. Well, thanks for joining me on that painting of father and daughter portrait. I hope you got a lot out of that. Hope you're enjoying the business learnings that I'm sharing with you as well along my journey, so they can help you on your journey as well. I think that's what art is, isn't it? It is a journey. We're constantly learning, constantly finding new ways of doing things. Now, next week, as I said, we're going to be painting Albert. Now, this one I'm going to crop in really tight to him. I'm going to make part of the face darker so it almost blends into the background on one side of the face. He's wearing glasses as well, so some interesting stuff here going on. So I hope you can join me. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, give me that thumbs up, all the usual stuff, and until then, enjoy your art, and I'll see you next week.